It all started in 1981 when I traveled to Blue Earth, Minnesota, and laid eyes on the family Bible for the very first time.
Today, we're diving headfirst into what I honestly think is the ultimate American immigration narrative. And we're going to do it by tracking the life of just one guy, Fredrick Kuss. When we talk about history, it's so incredibly easy to get lost in the massive statistics and those sweeping generalizations. But by zooming in on a single, really well-documented journey, the whole grand story of 19th century immigration just comes alive, becomes personal, and man, does it become understandable.
And there's this fantastic quote from our source material that perfectly sets the stage for today. It goes, "Lest we forget our heritage, we no longer are." Just let that sink in for a second. It's an incredibly powerful idea, right? Understanding who we are today absolutely requires a deep and sometimes really difficult look at where we came from and the sheer grit it took for those who came before us to pave the way.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the shifting Prussian homeland. Okay, so to truly get Fredrick's journey, we've got to rewind the clock and set the scene in 19th century Europe. Imagine a world of royalty, intense political struggles, and borders that just wouldn't stay put. This was the complex, shifting geography of the 19th century Prussian Empire. Fredrick Kuss was actually born on July 28, 1865, in a region called Posen, more specifically, a little town called Wissek. Now, if you try looking for Wissek on a modern map today, you're going to have a really hard time. The borders have moved so dramatically over the last century that his birthplace is now located in modern-day Poland, going by the name Fredrick. And this territory, it was a place of wild extremes. You literally had the wealthiest elites and the most desperately poor people living right on top of each other.
Which brings us to Section 2, Tragedy and Lost Wealth. So that massive geopolitical backdrop is super important, but let's zoom back into the micro level, Fredrick's actual family. We have these amazing, tangible primary artifacts today, like his portrait and the actual handwritten Kuss family Bible. These documents are total gold mines. Because of them, we know for a fact that Fredrick was born into a pretty wealthy family. He wasn't destitute at all. His family had real means, they had land, and had status in the community.
Which naturally leads to a massive, glaring question. Why on earth would the son of a wealthy family just leave it all behind? I mean, think about it. If you have comfort and wealth in Prussia, what could possibly push you to abandon your homeland, cross a totally unforgiving ocean, and start over with literally nothing? Well, history usually hinges on the unexpected.
And for Fredrick, the unexpected was devastating. In 1875, absolute tragedy struck. Fredrick was just 10 years old when his father, Julius, was brutally trampled to death by the family's own team of horses. The fallout from this was just catastrophic for the young kid. His mother eventually remarried into a family named Timm, and the family records show that the entire Kuss family wealth simply transferred over to the Timm family. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, Fredrick lost his dad and his entire inheritance. This was the massive push factor that completely rewrote his destiny.
Let's move right along to Section 3, the transatlantic voyage.
So, disinherited and with his ties to his homeland abruptly severed, Fredrick was forced to look to the West. But getting to America wasn't as easy as just buying a one-way ticket. The records actually show he tried to make the move 3 separate times before it finally stuck. If we look at the timeline, we start with his birth in 1865, then that terrible loss of his father in 75. Fast forward 15 years to August 1890, and that's when he begins his permanent transition away from Germany. The whole thing finally culminates in his arrival in New York on August 13, 1891. He's 26 years old at this point, and he is ready to forge his own path.
And the way he got there? Actually, a super fascinating piece of industrial history. He arrived on a vessel called the Furst Bismarck. Now, this wasn't just any old passenger ship. Built for the Hamburg-America line, it was a state-of-the-art twin-screw-fast steamer. Right around 1891, it made the crossing from Germany to New York in just 6 days, 2 hours, and 44 minutes. It was wildly celebrated as the fastest ship on the entire route. So Fredrick's voyage was literally part of this crazy, record-breaking era of rapid transatlantic travel.
All right, Section 4, Bertha's Escape from Hardship.
Now, Fredrick's story is really only half of this legacy. To get the whole picture, we have to introduce the woman whose path would eventually cross his in the American Midwest, his future wife, Bertha Ferch. And their backgrounds? Night and day. While Fredrick was born into wealth but pushed out by tragedy and a lost inheritance, Bertha's situation was entirely different. Her family in Germany were poor debtor farmers. I mean, they literally lived in the space above a barn on their employer's property. It's a perfect illustration of the two very different types of push factors that drove immigrants to the U.S. Some were fleeing a sudden loss of status, while others were desperately trying to escape generations of inescapable poverty.
And we really need to emphasize just how harsh Bertha's reality was, because the source material doesn't sugarcoat it. When Bertha came home from school, her daily chore was to gather sheep manure. She actually had to use her own dress as a sack to carry it out to fertilize the fields. And it gets worse. Around Passover, she was forced to force-feed geese to plump them up for sale. She had to shove dumplings down the birds' throats, a brutal, miserable chore that left her fingers and hands literally ripped to bloody pieces by their raspy inner mouths. It's those awful sensory details that help us really feel the extreme hardship Bertha was escaping when her family finally sailed for America in 1895.
Which brings us to our final chapter, Section 5, Building a Minnesota Legacy.
So both Fredrick and Bertha endured just immense struggles back in Europe, but their individual journeys westward were destined to intersect. They eventually found each other and were married in January of 1896 in Blue Earth, Minnesota. And together, they built a legacy from absolute scratch. You have Fredrick, the boy who lost his wealthy inheritance, and Bertha, the girl who carried manure in her dress. Together, they forged an entirely new life as farmers in Faribault County, putting down incredibly deep roots in the rich soil of Minnesota.
And if you want to know how deep those roots went, just look at this staggering number, 14. That's right, Fredrick and Bertha had 14 children together. From a lost inheritance and calloused bloody hands in Prussia grew this massive, sprawling American family tree. It is such a beautiful testament to survival, to resilience, and to the sheer scale of the legacy that can grow from two people who just completely refuse to be defined by the tragedies of their past.
And that wraps up our explainer for today, but I want to leave you with a quick thought before we go. We were only able to uncover all of these incredible details because someone, somewhere, took the time to preserve a family Bible, some old maps, and a few faded photographs. So it really makes you wonder, based on the amazing journey of the Kuss family, what forgotten artifacts might be sitting up in your attic right now just waiting to tell the fascinating story of your own heritage? Think about it.